I'm going to start this story with an uncomfortable truth. 4 years, actual years, I genuinely believed I was taking good care of my teeth. I brushed every single day, sometimes more than once. I used fluoride toothpaste, mouthwash, dental floss. I followed everything everyone told me was the right routine. I bought the most expensive products on the shelf, the ones that promised total protection, whiter teeth, fresh breath for hours. I did everything right. And yet, something wasn't adding up. Every month that passed, my teeth seemed more sensitive. It wasn't intense pain. It wasn't the kind of thing that sends you running to the dentist in a panic. It was something more subtle, more sneaky. Small shocks when drinking something cold. A dull ache when biting into something too hot. A quiet fragility I couldn't explain, couldn't name, but that was clearly there, and slowly getting worse. And the worst part? The persistent bad breath. Even after brushing. Even after using mouthwash. Even after taking every precaution in the world, it came back. Discreet. But constant. The kind you only notice when someone leans back slightly during a conversation, or when you catch people turning their face away. The kind that slowly erodes your confidence without you ever being able to pinpoint the cause. And that's when something inside me changed. I stopped accepting it. I stopped assuming this was normal or genetic or just the way my mouth is. I started questioning things for real. What if the problem wasn't a lack of care, but the wrong kind of care? What if the very things I believed were protecting me were actually part of the problem? That question changed everything. The investigation nobody tells you about. I dove into this investigation the way someone does when they've stopped accepting surface-level answers. I started reading studies, scientific papers, interviews with dentists who go off-script, testimonials from people who had been through the same thing. And what I discovered in the weeks that followed completely transformed the way I looked at something as basic, as everyday, as apparently simple as brushing my teeth. Because the truth that nobody puts on the toothpaste label, that no TV commercial ever shows, that often goes unmentioned even in quick dental appointments, is that there is an extremely common habit. A habit repeated every single day by millions of people around the world. A habit that looks correct, feels healthy, seems responsible. And that may be, slowly and silently, weakening your tooth enamel without you ever noticing. And this mistake isn't just about whether you brush. It's about how you brush. When you brush. The pressure you use. The frequency. The sequence of habits throughout your day. These are details that seem insignificant on their own, but that, added up over months and years, create a silently destructive pattern for your oral health. And the most ironic part of all? The people who make this mistake the most are exactly the ones who care the most about their dental health. Not the ones who neglect. The ones who make the effort. The ones who are convinced they're doing everything right. Maybe that's your story. Maybe it's mine. It definitely was. The mistake nobody notices until it's too late. Let me tell you what I discovered, clearly, directly, without beating around the bush. Tooth enamel, that outer layer coating your teeth, is the hardest substance in the human body. Harder than bone. It's what protects the dentin, the nerves, the entire internal structure of the tooth. It's what keeps your teeth strong, healthy, and resistant. But it has a weak point. A weak point very few people know about. Enamel is vulnerable to acid. And we're not just talking about sodas or industrial fruit juices. We're talking about foods you probably consume every single day without even thinking about it. Citrus fruits like oranges, lemons, and pineapple. Vinegar in salad dressings. Tomatoes. Coffee. Wine. Yogurt. Even sparkling water has enough acidity to affect enamel over time. Here's what happens. When you consume something acidic, the pH in your mouth drops. The environment becomes acidic. And in that acidic environment, your tooth enamel goes through a process called demineralization. It literally loses minerals, becomes more porous, more fragile, more vulnerable. This is biology. You can't entirely avoid it. That's just how it works. The problem isn't the food itself. The problem is what you do immediately afterward. Studies show that after consuming acidic foods or drinks, enamel remains in a state of vulnerability for anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. Your mouth's pH needs that time to naturally neutralize, with the help of saliva, before enamel can begin to recover. And what do most people do in exactly that window? They brush their teeth. I just ate, I need to brush. I had coffee, let me clean my teeth right away. I ate an orange, better rinse and brush. The intention is great. The timing is catastrophic. Because when you brush teeth with temporarily demineralized enamel, with too much pressure or poor technique, you are essentially scrubbing a surface that is already fragile. It's like sanding wet wood. You remove far more than you would if you waited for it to dry first. And this damage happens every day, every meal, every snack, repeated hundreds of times over the course of a year and thousands of times over the years. And suddenly, the sensitivity makes sense. The fragility makes sense. The bad breath makes sense. Everything starts clicking into place. The cascade effect nobody explains. This is where the story gets even more interesting, and, depending on how you look at it, even more concerning. Tooth enamel isn't just aesthetic protection. It's not there to keep your teeth white and pretty. It's there to maintain the internal balance of your entire oral structure. When enamel weakens, when it starts wearing down at an accelerated rate, a whole cascade of consequences begins to set in. Sensitivity increases. Because dentin, the layer directly beneath enamel, has tiny channels that connect directly to the tooth's nerves. With thinner enamel, stimuli that were previously blocked now reach those nerves. Cold, heat, sweets, pressure. Everything starts to be felt more intensely, more uncomfortably, more persistently. Teeth become more susceptible to cavities. With compromised enamel, bacteria naturally present in the mouth have easier access to the deeper layers of the tooth. These bacteria feed on sugars, produce acids as a metabolic byproduct, and deepen the damage further. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that, without intervention, only gets worse over time. Bad breath gets worse. And this is the part that surprises people the most. Most people think bad breath is about surface hygiene, food residue, bacterial film on the teeth. And that is part of the picture, yes. But there is something deeper happening when enamel is compromised. When the tooth structure becomes more exposed, the balance of the oral microbiome shifts. The microbiome, the community of microorganisms that naturally lives in your mouth, is extremely sensitive to its environment. Changes in pH, temperature, and the composition of dental surfaces all affect which bacteria thrive and which ones recede into the background. When the environment becomes unbalanced, anaerobic bacteria, those that thrive in oxygen-free environments, especially in protected niches like interdental spaces, gingival sulcus areas, and fissures in enamel, proliferate more easily. And it's exactly these bacteria that are responsible for producing volatile sulfur compounds, the characteristically foul-smelling substances at the root of chronic bad breath. In other words, bad breath isn't just a surface problem. It's a thermometer of what's happening in the internal environment of your mouth. And while you treat the symptom, the breath, without treating the cause, the imbalance that creates it, you will keep fighting a losing battle, pouring mouthwash over a problem that mouthwash alone can never fix. The discovery that changed everything. Up until this point, what I was learning was the problem. The mechanism of damage. The reason why everything I was feeling made sense. But understanding the problem doesn't solve the problem. And it was in the next discovery that things truly changed for me. Because most people, and I was one of them, assume that dental wear is irreversible. That once enamel is gone, it's gone forever. That the only solution is the dentist with invasive procedures, resins, veneers, expensive treatments that feel more like damage control than real healing. That belief is, in large part, wrong. Not in an absolute sense. There are cases where the damage is too extensive to be reversed by natural processes. But for the vast majority of people who are in the early or middle stages of this wear process, there is a fundamental biological mechanism that almost nobody knows by its proper name: dental remineralization. Your teeth are not dead structures. They are not like a glass window, static, inert, incapable of renewal. They are living structures in constant exchange with the surrounding environment. Minerals flow in, minerals flow out. This process happens every day, multiple times a day, while you live, eat, breathe, and sleep. When the pH of your mouth is balanced and the availability of minerals is adequate, your teeth go through a process of remineralization, reabsorption of calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and other minerals that gradually rebuild the enamel. It's a slow process, but it is real, it is measurable, and it is far more powerful than most people imagine. The problem is that, in the modern lifestyle, this balance rarely exists in its ideal form. A diet poor in minerals, inadequate brushing habits, frequent consumption of acidic foods without the necessary recovery window, chronic stress that alters saliva's pH and reduces its protective capacity, mouth breathing that dries out the oral environment and diminishes saliva's remineralizing action. These are factors that, combined, permanently tilt the balance toward demineralization. And so the teeth weaken, year after year, silently. But when you understand this mechanism, when you truly internalize that your teeth have the biological capacity to rebuild themselves given the right conditions, something shifts in the way you approach your oral health. It stops being about damage control and starts being about creating an environment where healing is possible. What remineralization actually requires. Now here's the part most people skip over because they want the quick answer, the single product, the one trick that fixes everything. I understand. I looked for that too. It doesn't exist. But what does exist is something arguably better. A small set of consistent, science-backed adjustments that, when made simultaneously, create the conditions your body needs to do the work it was designed to do. The first pillar is timing your brushing correctly. This is the foundational correction. After consuming acidic foods or drinks, wait at least 30 minutes before brushing. During this window, drink plain water, rinse your mouth gently, chew sugar-free gum if you need to. These actions help raise the pH and stimulate saliva production, accelerating the mouth's natural recovery process. But keep the toothbrush away until the enamel has had time to stabilize. It feels counterintuitive. Every instinct tells you to clean immediately. But this single adjustment alone can dramatically slow down enamel erosion, and when combined with the other pillars, the results can be genuinely remarkable. The second pillar is brushing technique, and this one deserves more attention than it usually gets. Most people brush with the same motion they use to scrub a dirty pan. Back and forth, hard, fast, efficient. It feels productive. It is, in fact, damaging. The correct technique involves soft, circular, or angled motions, with a soft bristled toothbrush, applying only enough pressure to feel the bristles making contact, not pressing them into a flattened fan against the tooth surface. If your toothbrush bristles are fraying outward within a few weeks of use, you are applying too much pressure. This isn't a minor aesthetic point. The difference between aggressive and gentle brushing technique over years of daily use is the difference between enamel that holds up and enamel that progressively thins. The third pillar is mineral nutrition, and this is where the connection between what you eat and how your teeth feel becomes undeniable. Calcium is the mineral most people associate with teeth, but it works in concert with phosphorus and magnesium in ways that are often overlooked. Phosphorus is essential for the crystalline structure of hydroxyapatite, the mineral compound that makes up enamel. Without adequate phosphorus, calcium alone can't fully do its job. And magnesium acts as a cofactor in dozens of enzyme reactions involved in mineral metabolism throughout the body, including in dental tissue. Good dietary sources of these minerals include full-fat dairy products, which also contain fat-soluble vitamins that aid mineral absorption, leafy greens, nuts and seeds, especially pumpkin seeds for magnesium, sardines and canned salmon eaten with the bones, and bone broth for those who include it in their diet. But dietary changes alone aren't always enough, especially if the damage has been accumulating for years. This is where targeted remineralization strategies come in. Specific protocols and approaches that go beyond general nutrition to directly support the enamel rebuilding process. These are the things we've compiled in the guide linked below, and they go much deeper than anything I can cover in a single video. The fourth pillar is saliva optimization, and this is possibly the most underappreciated factor in dental health. Saliva is not just liquid in your mouth. It is an active biological fluid packed with minerals, proteins, enzymes, and antibacterial compounds. It neutralizes acids, washes away food debris, supplies minerals to the enamel surface, and acts as a constant protective medium for your teeth. When saliva production is reduced, by dehydration, mouth breathing, certain medications, chronic stress, or dietary factors, the teeth lose their primary defense mechanism. The balance tips toward demineralization, bacteria proliferate more freely, and the conditions for sensitivity, cavities, and bad breath are created. Staying consistently hydrated is the most basic intervention, but it's one most people chronically fail to maintain. Beyond that, breathing through the nose, which preserves moisture in the mouth, managing stress levels, which affects both saliva composition and pH, and avoiding substances that dry out the mouth, like alcohol-based mouthwashes, which are far more common than people realize, are all meaningful adjustments. The bigger picture. Why this matters more than you think. I want to step back for a moment and talk about something that goes beyond sensitivity and bad breath. Your oral health is not isolated from the rest of your health. This is a connection that the medical community has been increasingly documenting and that most people are still completely unaware of in their daily lives. The mouth is the entry point to the body. Everything you breathe, eat, and drink passes through it. The bacterial populations that live there are in direct communication with your gut microbiome, your respiratory system, and through the bloodstream, with virtually every organ in your body. Research has linked chronic periodontal disease, the progressive destruction of the tissue supporting teeth, to cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, adverse pregnancy outcomes, and systemic inflammation markers. These are not fringe theories. These are associations supported by substantial bodies of peer-reviewed research published in major medical journals. The mechanisms being proposed are multiple. Oral bacteria that enter the bloodstream through inflamed or compromised gum tissue. Chronic low-grade inflammation originating in the mouth that contributes to systemic inflammatory load. The impact of oral health on insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. None of this means that fixing your brushing technique will cure heart disease. It doesn't work like that. But it does mean that the health of your mouth, the strength of your enamel, the balance of your oral microbiome, the integrity of your gums, is a genuine component of your overall health, not a cosmetic side issue you deal with twice a year at a dental checkup. When you look at it through this lens, investing time and attention into understanding and improving your oral health is not vanity. It is not excessive. It is basic, foundational self-care with implications that ripple outward in ways most people never see coming. The signals your mouth is already sending you. I want to ask you something directly. As you've been listening to all of this, have any of these things resonated? Have you recognized any of these patterns in your own life? The mild sensitivity that you've been quietly ignoring because it's not severe enough to feel like an emergency. The bad breath that returns no matter how carefully you brush. The feeling that your teeth are somehow not as strong, not as solid, not as reliable as they used to be. The discomfort you feel when the dentist tells you that you have enamel wear, and you can't understand why, because you brush every day. These are not random. They are not just bad luck. They are signals. Your body is extraordinarily good at communicating when something is off. The problem is that most of us have been conditioned to treat symptoms rather than asking what the symptoms are pointing to. We pop a sensitivity toothpaste into the routine and call it managed. We rinse with a stronger mouthwash and consider the bad breath handled. We schedule a filling and move on. But the underlying pattern that created those symptoms? It keeps running. And 6 months later, at the next appointment, there's a new filling needed. Another area of sensitivity. Another conversation about the gums receding slightly more than last time. It doesn't have to work this way. What real change looks like. I want to be honest with you about something important. The adjustments I'm describing are not complicated. They are not expensive. They do not require you to overhaul your entire life or subscribe to some extreme dental protocol that takes over your mornings. But they do require one thing that many people are genuinely resistant to: changing a habit that feels correct. Brushing immediately after eating feels right. It's been reinforced by years of habit, years of advertising, years of the simple logic that I just put food in my mouth, I should clean it. Waiting feels wrong. It feels like neglect. Getting past that feeling, not with willpower, but with understanding, is the key. Because once you genuinely understand why the wait matters, once you can picture the pH curve of your mouth over the 45 minutes after a meal, once you understand that brushing during that window isn't cleaning, it's grinding, the behavior change becomes almost automatic. You don't have to force yourself. You just know better. And knowing better is where it all begins. The people I've spoken to who made these adjustments, consistently, patiently, over a period of weeks and months, describe a progression that follows a reliable pattern. First, the sensitivity begins to reduce. Not overnight, but noticeably. Then the bad breath becomes less persistent, less of a daily battle. And then, gradually, there is this return of something that many of them hadn't realized they'd lost: confidence. The quiet, uncomplicated confidence of a mouth that feels healthy, strong, and like something you don't have to worry about. That is what this is ultimately about. Not perfect teeth. Not flawless white enamel. Just the ability to eat, speak, smile, and engage with the world without your mouth being a source of anxiety. The complete picture. So let me bring it all together for you. The problem begins with a simple biological fact. Acid temporarily weakens enamel. This happens every time you eat or drink something acidic, which, for most people, is multiple times per day. The window of vulnerability lasts up to an hour. Brushing during that window accelerates enamel wear. Over months and years, this produces thinning enamel, increasing sensitivity, changes in the oral microbiome, and persistent bad breath. The solution is not a product. It is a system. It starts with timing, protecting the vulnerable window after acidic exposure before introducing any abrasive action. It continues with technique, gentle, deliberate, anatomically appropriate brushing that cleans without abrading. It requires mineral nutrition, ensuring your body has the raw materials it needs for enamel remineralization to actually occur. It depends on saliva health, protecting and optimizing your mouth's natural defense system. And it is supported by an understanding of the oral-systemic connection, recognizing that your mouth is part of your whole body and deserves to be treated as such. None of these things are hard. All of them are accessible. And the combination of all of them, applied consistently, is what makes the difference between a mouth that slowly deteriorates and one that holds its ground, and in many cases, genuinely rebuilds. A final word. I want to leave you with the thought that started all of this for me. I spent years doing something I thought was right, getting results I couldn't understand, and assuming the problem was something I couldn't control. That's a frustrating place to be. It's also an incredibly common one. The moment things shifted wasn't when I found a miracle product. It was when I found the right information. Information that was specific, mechanistic, and actionable. Information that made the invisible visible, that showed me exactly what was happening and exactly what to do about it. That's what I want this to be for you. Not a sales pitch. Not a scare tactic. Just the kind of clarity that lets you make genuinely informed decisions about something you do every single day, and that has implications for your health that extend far beyond your smile. Your teeth are not just cosmetic. They are structural, functional, and systemic. They deserve the same quality of attention and understanding that you would give any other important aspect of your health. And now that you know what you know about the acid window, about remineralization, about the oral microbiome, about the cascade effect that leads from enamel wear to sensitivity to bad breath to systemic consequences, you are equipped to do something about it. The complete method, the step-by-step guide that goes deeper than everything covered here, is linked in the first link of the description below. It's there for when you're ready to take the next step. Because caring for your teeth isn't about doing more. It's about doing it right. And right starts with understanding. If this content opened your eyes in any way, if it connected dots you'd been trying to connect for a while, subscribe to the channel. Because this is only one piece of a much larger picture we are building here together. And in the next video, I'm going to show you something that can take this transformation even further.